September 14, 1945. Camp Ellis, Illinois. The transport truck's engine cuts, and in the sudden silence, Greta Fisher hears crickets. Real crickets, not the imagined ones that had buzzed in her ears during the 72-hour journey across the Atlantic in a cargo hold that smelled of diesel and vomit. Her wrists still bear the circular impressions from the restraints, faint pink rings against skin that hasn't seen sunlight in months. She's 26 years old, a cryptographer, a prisoner of war. And she's about to discover that everything she believed about her captors was a carefully constructed lie. The other women file out ahead of her, 12 German female soldiers, their boots scraping against the truck bed's metal floor. Greta waits her turn, her heart hammering against ribs she can count through her uniform. The fabric is coarse, military-issue wool that's been worn so long it's developed a sheen like old leather. It scratches. It always scratches. For 3 years, she's slept in variations of this uniform, told that comfort was a bourgeois weakness, that true German women proved their worth through endurance, through the ability to function despite discomfort. Softness was for the decadent. Softness was for the defeated. She steps down into American soil, and the first thing that hits her is the smell. Not gunpowder, not the acrid chemical stench of the decryption facility where she'd spent 18-hour shifts. Not even the salt rot of the ship. It's grass. Freshly cut grass, sweet and green, mixed with something else, something baking. Bread, maybe. Her stomach clenches so hard she has to press a hand against it. When did she last eat? Yesterday. The day before. Time has become elastic, unreliable. The camp stretches before them, rows of wooden barracks under a sky so blue it seems artificial. September in Illinois is nothing like September in Berlin. The air here is thick, humid, carrying warmth that feels almost aggressive after the cold concrete rooms of her last posting. Guard towers rise at intervals, but they seem almost decorative, not the menacing structures she'd expected. The guards themselves are young, some barely old enough to shave, their uniforms crisp and their expressions more curious than hostile. One of them, a boy with red hair and freckles, looks away when she meets his eyes, as if he's embarrassed to be staring. They're processed in a building that smells of paper and coffee. Real coffee. The scent is so powerful Greta feels dizzy. A female officer, American, with dark hair pinned in neat rolls, speaks to them in careful, accented German. Her words are bureaucratic, procedural. Names, ranks, service numbers. Greta answers automatically, her voice sounding strange in her own ears. The officer's uniform is tailored, fitted to her body in a way that acknowledges she has a body, curves, and shape, not just a functional frame for carrying equipment. The fabric looks soft. The thought arrives unbidden and Greta pushes it away, ashamed. They're assigned to Barracks 7. The walk there takes 3 minutes, past other buildings, past groups of male POWs who stop their conversations to watch. Some call out in German, questions, warnings, crude jokes. Greta keeps her eyes forward. The barracks door opens and the interior is nothing like she imagined. It's clean. Genuinely clean, with wooden floors that have been swept recently, windows that let in actual light, and rows of beds, each with a thin mattress and folded blankets. Not straw pallets, not concrete bunks, beds. An older woman, German, wearing a faded dress and an armband marking her as a barracks supervisor, explains the rules in a tired voice. Wake at 6. Breakfast at 7. Work assignments to be determined. Lights out at 10. She gestures to footlockers at the end of each bed, to the communal washroom at the barracks' far end, to the small stove in the center of the room. Then she says something that doesn't register at first. Something about evening distribution. Greta claims a bed near the window. The mattress is thin but real, stuffed with something that gives slightly when she presses her hand against it. The blanket is gray wool, military issue but clean, smelling faintly of soap. She sits on the edge of the bed, and for the first time in 72 hours she's still. The other women move around her, unpacking meager belongings, whispering to each other. Someone's crying, quiet sobs that she's trying to muffle. Someone else laughs, a sound edged with hysteria. Greta just sits, her hands folded in her lap, and tries to understand that she's still alive. Dinner is at 6. They're marched to a mess hall that seats hundreds, long tables with benches, the air thick with the smell of cooked food. Real food. Greta gets in line with a metal tray, watches as servers, American soldiers, ladle portions onto her plate. Potatoes. Actual potatoes, boiled and buttered, steam rising. Some kind of meat, gray and unidentifiable but smelling of salt and fat. Bread. A slice of white bread, soft and fresh. And vegetables, green beans that glisten with moisture. She carries her tray to a table and sits, staring at the food as if it might disappear. Around her, women eat with desperate efficiency, some crying as they chew, some laughing at the absurdity of it. Greta takes a bite of potato and the butter melts on her tongue, rich and creamy, and she has to close her eyes because the sensation is overwhelming. When did she last taste butter? Real butter, not the ersatz margarine that tasted like candle wax. She eats slowly, methodically, forcing herself not to rush even though her body screams for more, faster now. The bread is soft, so soft it compresses between her fingers, nothing like the dense black bread of rations that sat in her stomach like a stone. The meat is bland but substantial, and she chews each bite thoroughly, afraid that if she eats too quickly she'll be sick. Across from her, a woman named Ilse, a radio operator from Frankfurt, eats with tears streaming down her face, not bothering to wipe them away. No one comments. They all understand. After dinner, they're marched back to the barracks. The sun is setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that seem too beautiful for a prison camp. Greta's stomach is full, genuinely full, for the first time in months, and the sensation is almost painful. She feels heavy, weighted down, as if the food has anchored her to the earth in a way she hasn't been anchored in years. The barracks supervisor is waiting when they return, standing beside a cart piled with folded fabric. White fabric. Greta's first thought is bandages, medical supplies, but as they get closer she realizes what she's seeing. Nightgowns. Stacks of white cotton nightgowns. The supervisor begins distributing them, calling out sizes in accented English. Small, medium, large. The women step forward, hesitant, as if this might be a trick, a test. Greta watches as Ilse receives hers, a medium, and unfolds it with shaking hands. It's simple, almost plain, with short sleeves and a collar, buttons running down the front. But the fabric is soft, not scratchy wool, not rough linen. Soft cotton that moves like water between Ilse's fingers. She holds it to her face and breathes in, and Greta sees her shoulders start to shake. When Greta's turn comes, she steps forward automatically, her body moving while her mind struggles to process what's happening. The supervisor looks her up and down with a practiced eye and hands her a medium. The nightgown is light in Greta's hands, almost weightless after years of heavy uniforms. She carries it back to her bed and sits, the fabric pooled in her lap. Her fingers trace the buttons, small white circles that fasten through actual buttonholes, not the hooks and eyes of military issue. The collar is finished with a simple hem, no rough edges. The sleeves are wide enough to move in. It's designed for comfort, for sleep. for the acknowledgement that the person wearing it is human, female, deserving of basic dignity. Greta hasn't worn a nightgown in 3 years. When she joined the Signals Corps in 1942, she'd been issued 2 uniforms, 2 sets of undergarments, 1 pair of boots. She slept in her uniform or in the scratchy cotton shift provided for barracks wear, a shapeless thing that hung like a sack and chafed at every point of contact. The message was clear. Femininity was a distraction. Comfort was weakness. German women proved their loyalty through sacrifice, through the willingness to endure discomfort without complaint. Greta had accepted this. She'd believed it even. Softness was for peacetime. Softness was for women who didn't understand what was at stake. But holding this nightgown, this simple white cotton nightgown that some American supply officer had ordered by the hundreds, Greta feels something crack inside her chest. This isn't luxury. This isn't silk or lace or any of the frivolous things the Reich had condemned. This is basic acknowledgement. This is the recognition that even prisoners, even enemy combatants, even German women who'd worked to break Allied codes are still women. Still human, still deserving of the small comfort of sleeping in something soft. A guard appears at the barracks door, the same red-haired boy from earlier. He speaks in halting German, reading from a card. Fresh nightclothes are distributed weekly. If the size is incorrect, requests can be made for exchanges. Laundry is collected every Monday. His voice is nervous, as if he's afraid of saying the wrong thing. Then he adds, almost as an afterthought, that there are also robes available if anyone wants one, for walking to the washroom. He gestures vaguely toward the cart, where folded cotton robes sit in a separate pile. Then he leaves, the door closing softly behind him. The barracks is silent. 12 women, 12 nightgowns, 12 faces reflecting the same confusion, the same dawning realization. This is a prison camp. They are prisoners of war. They are the enemy. And they've just been given fresh nightclothes, with the promise of weekly replacements, with the option to request different sizes, with robes for modesty. Greta looks down at the nightgown in her lap and something inside her breaks completely. The tears come without warning, hot and fast, spilling down her cheeks before she can stop them. Her shoulders shake. Her breath comes in gasps. She presses the nightgown to her face, feeling the soft cotton against her skin, and sobs into it, great wrenching sobs that tear up from somewhere deep inside her chest. Around her, other women are crying too. Ilse is curled on her bed, clutching her nightgown like a child with a beloved toy. Another woman, whose name Greta doesn't know, is laughing and crying at the same time, rocking back and forth. The older supervisor watches from her corner, her face unreadable. Greta cries until her throat is raw, until her eyes burn, until she has no tears left. Then she sits up, wipes her face with shaking hands, and begins to undress. Her uniform peels away like dead skin, the wool stiff with old sweat and dirt. Her undergarments are gray with age, elastic stretched out, fabric thin enough to tear. She stands in her barracks in her underwear, surrounded by other women doing the same. And for the first time in 3 years, she's not ashamed of her body, not trying to hide the fact that she has breasts, hips, curves that the uniform was designed to obscure. The nightgown slides over her head like a blessing. The cotton is cool against her skin, soft in a way she'd forgotten fabric could be soft. It falls to mid-calf, loose enough to move in, the sleeves brushing her elbows. She fastens the buttons one by one, her fingers clumsy, and when she's done she stands there feeling the fabric shift around her body with each breath. It's not tight. It's not scratchy. It doesn't bind or chafe or remind her with every movement that she's a soldier, a tool, a cog in a machine. It just is, soft and clean and hers. She walks to the washroom, bare feet on wooden floors, and catches her reflection in the small mirror above the sinks. The woman looking back is gaunt, hollow-eyed, her hair lank and unwashed. But she's wearing a white nightgown with buttons and a collar, and for just a moment she looks like a person. Not a soldier, not a prisoner, a person. That night, Greta lies in her bed under the gray wool blanket, wearing her cotton nightgown, and tries to remember the last time she felt this way. Not comfortable, exactly. The mattress is thin and the barracks is full of the sounds of other women breathing, crying, shifting in their sleep. But there's something else, something she can't quite name. It takes her an hour to identify it. Safety. She feels safe. Not because the war is over, though it is. Not because she's no longer in danger, though she isn't. But because someone, some anonymous American supply officer or camp administrator, thought to provide nightgowns for female prisoners. Thought to acknowledge that they might want to sleep in something soft. Thought to treat them, even in captivity, as women deserving of basic dignity. The Reich had told her that such considerations were frivolous. That real German women didn't need comfort, didn't need softness, didn't need acknowledgement of their femininity. That strength came from endurance, from the ability to function despite deprivation, and Greta had believed it. She'd worn her scratchy uniform with pride. She'd slept on hard bunks without complaint. She'd proven her loyalty through her willingness to suffer. But lying here in her American-issued nightgown, Greta understands with sudden, crushing clarity that it was all a lie. The deprivation wasn't patriotic. It was cruelty dressed up as virtue. The discomfort wasn't strength. It was control. Her government hadn't eliminated feminine comforts to make women stronger. They'd eliminated them to make women more compliant, more willing to accept suffering as normal, more convinced that their own needs were unimportant compared to the needs of the state. And the Americans, her captors, her enemies, had given her a nightgown, just a simple cotton nightgown. But in doing so, they'd exposed the entire architecture of lies she'd been living under. If even prisoners deserved basic comfort, basic dignity, basic acknowledgement of their humanity, then what did it say about a government that had denied those things to its own people? What did it say about a regime that had convinced women that wanting to sleep in something soft was a moral failing? Greta pulls the blanket up to her chin and feels the cotton nightgown shift against her skin. Tomorrow she'll wake up and still be a prisoner. She'll still face an uncertain future, possible prosecution, the shame of defeat. But tonight, she's wearing a nightgown that someone thought to provide. Tonight, she's been given back a piece of her humanity that she hadn't even realized was missing. And that changes everything. In the darkness, she hears Ilse whisper from the next bed, "Thank you." The words are in German, soft and broken. Greta doesn't know who Ilse is thanking. God, maybe, or the Americans, or just the universe for this small mercy. Greta doesn't respond. She just lies there, feeling the soft fabric against her skin, and lets herself cry again, quieter this time, tears of grief and relief and something else she can't quite name. The nightgowns become a ritual. Every Monday, they strip their beds and place their used nightgowns in the laundry basket. Every Monday evening, they receive fresh ones, clean and soft and smelling of soap. Some women request different sizes. The exchanges are made without comment, without judgment. Greta keeps her medium. It fits well enough, and there's something comforting about its familiarity now. The way the fabric has softened even more with washing. The way she knows exactly how it will feel when she pulls it on at night. The other women begin to change. Not dramatically, not overnight, but slowly, incrementally, they start to look less like soldiers and more like people. They wash their hair more carefully. They take time with their appearance, even in their prison-issue dresses. They laugh more easily. And every night they put on their nightgowns and go to sleep like human beings, not like tools that have been temporarily powered down until morning. Greta watches this transformation and understands that the nightgowns are doing something the Americans probably didn't even intend. They're not just providing comfort, they're providing proof. Proof that femininity isn't weakness. Proof that comfort isn't frivolous. Proof that acknowledging someone's humanity, even an enemy's humanity, doesn't diminish your own strength. It enhances it. Weeks pass. The autumn deepens. The leaves turn colors Greta has never seen. Brilliant reds and oranges that seem impossible after years of gray concrete and camouflage. She's assigned to work in the camp library, cataloging books, and the irony isn't lost on her. She spent the war breaking codes, trying to decipher enemy secrets. Now she's organizing American books, reading their spines, learning their language through titles and authors. The work is quiet, peaceful. No one rushes her. No one demands 18-hour shifts. She works her 8 hours and returns to the barracks and puts on her nightgown and sleeps. One evening in late October, a package arrives. It's addressed to the female POWs in Barracks 7, no specific name. Inside are hair ribbons. Actual ribbons in various colors, nothing fancy but real nonetheless. The accompanying note in German explains that they're from a church group in nearby Peoria, women who wanted the prisoners to have something cheerful. Greta holds a blue ribbon, satin and smooth, and remembers being 14 and wearing ribbons in her hair before school. Before the war, before everything. That night she braids her hair and ties it with the blue ribbon. It's a small thing, insignificant really. But when she catches her reflection in the washroom mirror, she sees a glimpse of the girl she used to be, before the Reich convinced her that such things were frivolous, that real women didn't need beauty or softness or joy. She sees herself not as a soldier or a prisoner or a tool, but as a woman who deserves to feel pretty, even here, even now. The nightgowns continue, week after week, clean and soft and reliable. They become the foundation of a new understanding, a new way of seeing the world. Greta begins to write letters home, carefully worded messages that pass through censors. She tells her mother about the food, about the work, about the nightgowns. She doesn't say what she's really thinking, that she's learning her government lied to her, that deprivation wasn't patriotic, that the Americans treat their prisoners better than the Reich treated its own soldiers. But maybe her mother will read between the lines. Maybe she'll understand. In December, the first snow falls. Greta watches it from the barracks window, big fat flakes that blanket the camp in white. That evening, they receive wool socks along with their nightgowns, thick and warm, to wear to the washroom on cold nights. It's such a small consideration, such a tiny acknowledgement of their comfort. But Greta puts on the socks and feels the warmth and understands that this, too, is a form of dignity. This, too, is proof that someone sees them as human. The war trials begin in Europe. News filters into the camp, stories of atrocities of camps that were nothing like this one, of prisoners who received no nightgowns, no fresh laundry, no acknowledgement of their humanity at all. Greta listens and feels sick. She'd known, in an abstract way, that terrible things were happening, but she hadn't understood the scale, hadn't understood how thoroughly her government had abandoned any pretense of human decency. And she thinks about her nightgown, about the simple cotton fabric that someone thought to provide, and understands how radical basic kindness really is. Years later, long after the camp has closed and Greta has returned to a Germany she barely recognizes, she'll still remember the nightgowns. She'll remember the first night, the way the soft cotton felt against skin that had forgotten softness. She'll remember crying into the fabric, the way it absorbed her tears without judgment. She'll remember the weekly ritual of fresh laundry, the reliability of that small comfort. And she'll understand that those nightgowns taught her something more valuable than any code she ever broke. They taught her that humanity isn't a luxury. Dignity isn't frivolous. And a government that convinces its people otherwise is a government that has already lost, no matter how many battles it wins. The nightgowns were just cotton and buttons. But they were also proof that another world was possible. A world where comfort wasn't weakness, where femininity wasn't failure, where even enemies could be treated with basic human decency. And once Greta had seen that world, had felt it against her skin every night for months, she could never unsee it, could never go back to believing the lies. The nightgowns had set her free in a way that the end of the war never could. And for that, she would be grateful for the rest of her life.